Doing all right. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, welcome to office hours. This is a super casual event where it's really just about whatever questions folks have. We do have a handful of folks registered, so maybe other folks will hop on. Um, but if not, here comes somebody. We'll get all the questions going. Um, so really today I don't have too much of an agenda. I have a couple of things to share, just that are things that we've been commonly fielding through our email. And then it's whatever y'all want to talk about. Uh, so some things to share, just to go ahead and start with those, is that if you haven't seen it in the email or on the website, we've added an additional opportunity for grantees that if we receive your pre-application before 5 p.m. on Thursday, we're going to be able to provide a completeness scan for that. And really, that is us just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can open your files. Good, excellent. We have all the files and we can open them. So it really is that base level. And for folks that are missing files or that we're having technical difficulties opening it, we're just following up with them to say, hey, we're having this challenge. Please make sure you get it in by the deadline. So that is an opportunity for folks, if they happen to have it done early, to be able to submit it early for that completeness scan. Uh, the other piece that we're fielding questions about is that a lot of people are already thinking ahead to what we need for the full application. And I just wanted to remind folks that like the pre-application is intended to be pretty light, and we really do just need those 5 documents for, if it's an acquisition, that we've asked for. We're having folks submit to us plenty more information, and we're not at the stage where you need to make the case. Like, and it's a lot of great storytelling. It's a great content. We just don't need it yet. So for your own sakes as grant applicants, to just keep that in mind of like, you don't have to do all the things yet. It's the pre-application form, the budget, the work plan, the climate resilience risk form, and if it's a development project, some sort of permitting report. So just to remind folks of that. And then sort of like 2 questions that we've been fielding a lot through email. One is we've had people asking, like, can things change between the pre-application and the full application? And the answer is yes, so long as it is substantively the same project. So like if you put in for a playground, like if the costs are changing based on updated estimates later, you start going down the permitting rabbit hole and realize that like you need to change a lot of parts of the design. Like that's all fine to update between the pre-application and the full application. The work plan can change, the budget can change, all of those pieces can change as long as it is, as I said, substantively the same project. Like if you put in for a playground in the pre-application, like you can't come put in for sports fields later. It still has to be the same project. Uh, has been one piece, but there is that opportunity to change. And if nothing changes, you can submit the same stuff. If we don't have any feedback for you, you can submit the same documents, but otherwise, you're welcome to change it. And then the other question we've been getting in email is about contingencies and budgets. So with that, just because this is being recorded, it'll be posted online afterwards, just to share with everybody who watches this recording, is that contingency reserves are not an eligible reimbursable expense. So you can't put in for the grant to say, well, we're going to get a reimbursement for our contingency reserve. That's not allowed at all. And in the example budget, we have included a contingency reserved line in that budget, mostly just to use that as an example of how to log ineligible things in the budget document. That being said, you are allowed to use contingencies for the sake of math. If it's your budget allocation, it's just not a reimbursable expense, because you know that some expenses will change a little bit. But the National Park Service does have some pretty strong guidelines on what that can be, because they do not allow contingencies in budgets for major project scope changes, unforeseen risks, or extraordinary events, is what they say. Is like those types of contingencies are not allowed. Your contingency, if you're going to use that as part of a budget estimate, should be estimated using a broadly accepted cost estimating methodology. So like you should be able to have grounds to say like, this is where that number came from, if you're going to use it. And as I said at the beginning, it's not reimbursable. So nothing contingency related can be reimbursed. And so with those kind of pieces, the National Park Service doesn't have like a firm, like this is the contingency number you should use, because it looks a little different project to project. They generally consider contingencies reasonable for budgeting purposes if it's 10 to 15% of construction costs. But if you're confident and you have a strong case of like why your estimate is different than that, the National Park Service will review that, but that's just an additional layer of review. So just wanted to kind of touch on that, so, because there's been questions that are like, oh, well, I see in the budget there was a contingency reserve of 20%. We're like, yes, it's there to show you how to put ineligible expenses into the budget formula, not because 20% is the number to use. So just to share that with everybody. So those were the updates I had coming into this. With that, I'll open it up to you. What would you all like to talk about today? And Sarah, you're muted, but hello.
Sorry. I have a couple of specific questions. One about the climate resilience risk form.
Okay.
So we're not a trail project.
Yep.
So several of the things are like either like blank or not applicable, and that's fine.
Yep.
Okay. And then at the bottom, it asks if this project was professionally designed or laid out, which we were a little confused by. We have a comprehensive plan for this park that we're applying to work on. So in that case, should we say that it was professionally designed, or what's it really asking there?
Well, so when we get projects for our grants, so this form, this climate resilience risk form, is new this year. So we'll fully acknowledge that this is a brand new form that we're going to be adjusting probably based on the feedback from this year. So if you're like, we're not a trails, if it says NA, or we give you the option to say, it's not applicable, unknown, those sorts of pieces, like feel free to use that, because we do get a lot of trails projects, which is why that's kind of a big audience for us with that. So feel free to use those. In terms of the professional design, like when we get across all of our grant submissions, we get things that are really broad across the whole spectrum of like who's been involved. Everything from like, yeah, we had a design firm or an engineer, it's been scoped and it's set up that way for whatever the project is, to just like a group of really enthusiastic volunteers who have a dream of making this project happen. And depending on the project and the risks, like that might matter or that might not. And so this is just an opportunity to share that, like, if your project has had that professional design, to say, yes, it has been. So like some places where, like, Sarah, can you tell me, like, in broad scale, like what type of project are you working on? Is it a playground?
Yeah,
Is it park development?
Yeah, I would say park development. It's like pickleball courts and tennis courts and basketball courts. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. But so for that, we're like the location of those relative to the park infrastructure, like, was a professional involved in that design to say that they should go here for these reasons. Because we have had things before where we've had, like, say, sports courts, like those types of things that have like that intentional surface, and people are like, we're gonna put them right next to the river because it's flat. We're like, flat is good. And also, like, if a professional engineer said, no, this is a great spot because of the way the river moves, like we've taken that into account, it's a different level of risk than just if it was, park staff who don't have planning experience, or that volunteer group who might know great things. It just gives us that kind of estimate to be like, yes, this has been assessed by somebody who does this on a day-to-day basis. And we have had volunteer also to say, this is not to really put down any of our volunteer groups, because we have volunteer groups with like retired trail builders, and even if they could have professional experience even as a volunteer, like those two things are not mutually exclusive in that way of like that professional expertise. But I should not be the one being a professional trail designer or a professional park designer, because that is not in my wheelhouse. So if I'm filling out this form for a park, like, I would be like, no, if Lauren is doing it, because that's not my experience and my expertise. So.
Okay. Great. And then on the work plan we have right
Mhm.
now, we have something on there that will be completed before the like performance period. It's the like designing and everything. Um, so should that be in the main part of the work plan, not the complementary piece, right?
If if it's because you're doing a development project and it's that design and planning, if it's going to be part of your request and a part of your grant, then yes, put it in that top box.
Okay.
Like if you were doing it and you're like, yeah, we're just doing it, but it's not connected to our match, it's not connected to the project, that's when we'd say put it in that other box. Or like if you're doing, say, pre-award site preparation is one that's come up in past. Like because it's a development project that would not be eligible for the grant. So, but you can still tell us that you're going to do site development or site prep in the spring, even though, or this summer. You could still tell us that's happening. It just won't be a part of the grant project.
Okay. Yeah, that's a thought. And then last question. Everything, like all the project costs should be in the budget, like including the match, right?
Well, I'm sorry, what was that? Can you repeat that?
Yeah, so like all of the project costs, including like the match piece, should be in the budget, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. That's all I have. So,
Awesome.
okay.
Well,
Well,
and that
thank you.
actually does remind me that was one thing I forgot to mention that we have just realized if you're doing an exact 50-50 split between like the national LWCF and your matching costs, you won't see this at all. But if it is anything other than equally 50-50, we do have an error in the budget template in terms of how it's calculating match percentage. So if you're like, oh, well, I'm asking for $50,000 and it says, I have $60,000 in match, uh, we will expect that percentage line of how it's auto calculating to actually be less than 50% because it's wrong. It's calculating what is your percent of the ask out of the total, not your match percentage. And so that was just like it's a template error that we acknowledge for everyone. We are watching for it. And so we are actually looking at the numbers of like, this is the request, this is the match. And we're going to double check that math and we'll flag it for anybody between the pre-application and the full application. But just to acknowledge that this is because this is the first time we've run this grant in 4 years and we're updating templates that we had a template error there.
Great. Thank you.
Well, Sarah, do you have any other questions?
No, I think that was it.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Good morning,
I'll hop off.
Lauren.
Okay.
Good
Good
morning, Lauren.
morning.
So I had similar questions on the trails. It was mainly a trail document, and we're doing land acquisition. So you answered that. Under the work plan, because we are looking to purchase land for a community park, under recreation type, they list a whole bunch of things. Do you want us to check anticipated uses, assuming we get the park, or just leave all those other ones blank and hit other and say we want to create a community park?
So with the recreation type activities, think about that of like what this parcel will be within 3 years after acquiring it
Okay.
for acquisition projects. So if you're saying, yeah, we're going to buy the park, but then, is it within 3 years that you're going to have it? That can be something you think about because all LWCF acquisitions, like the land acquisitions, that land has to be open to the public for recreation purposes within 3 years of purchase.
Yep.
And so even if like the end vision is a community park, but in the meantime, you say, well, step one is to get the land. We think it's realistically going to be 5 years till we get there. What are you going to do in the meantime within that 3 year period? Versus also if you're saying, yeah, we're going to buy the land and then the park is coming right away, like go ahead and just fill it out for the park. And that's true for the climate resilience risk form as well, is to like put on the lens of like, how is this land going to be used within the 3 years afterwards? So while many of those projects are like the criteria are trails focused, just because that's what we've seen the biggest impacts on with flooding. There's some very different questions with that. Like we also see it show up in sports complexes and playgrounds and other things. So there's questions throughout, but just to think about how it will be used for all of them. Because if you're like, yeah, none of this project is in a floodplain, that's great to be able to put it in. But if some of it is like to think about, like,
Yep.
that'll be part of the piece that we think about with the design going forward of like, is this actually the right parcel to acquire for a community park for the type of recreation you want to do? So that's how we use it. So fill it out thinking about how it will be used.
Sounds good. I'm good to go. Thank you.
Yeah. Was that the only question you had?
That was it. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, happy to help, and otherwise, good luck.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Bye.